In 1970, while Ford was busy stepping into a new era with the modern Maverick, a name thought to be gone suddenly returned, the Ford Falcon. But this wasn't the small, familiar Falcon of the early 60s. This time, it was a larger, somewhat patched-together sedan appearing in the middle of the year. And then it vanished after just 6 short months. No big advertising campaign, no grand farewell, just a strange note in the symphony of American automobiles. So why did Ford revive the Falcon name at the very moment it seemed buried for good? And what makes the 1970.5 version one of the oddest mysteries in automotive history? Let's dive into this unusual journey that lasted only half a year. The humble Falcon that carried big dreams. Back in 1960, America was facing a new kind of challenge. Small, fuel-efficient imports from Europe were flooding in. Practical little cars that didn't guzzle gas or take up half the driveway. Ford needed an answer, and that answer came in the form of the Falcon. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't powerful, but that was the point. The Falcon was a simple, no-nonsense machine built for everyday Americans. Affordable, easy to maintain, and humble in its styling. It gave working families exactly what they needed: basic transportation without the bloat. It quickly became a hit. But Ford didn't stop there. As the decade wore on, the Falcon began to stretch its wings. Sport packages were introduced, performance variants appeared, and buyers looking for a little extra excitement had new options to choose from. Underneath that plain exterior, there was room to grow. And here's the twist few people realize. The original Mustang, yes, that Mustang, was born from Falcon bones. In 1965, Ford took the compact Falcon chassis, sharpened the design, added some flair, and created one of the most iconic pony cars of all time. The humble Falcon, once built to fight economy cars, had unknowingly set the stage for a revolution in American performance. But as the spotlight shifted, the Falcon quietly stepped back, waiting for its final act. The Falcon fades, and a new name rises. By the late 1960s, the Falcon's shine had started to dim. What once felt fresh and practical was now seen as plain, outdated, and behind the times. Sales were slipping, the market was shifting. And although Ford tried to freshen things up, adding sleeker body lines and borrowing sporty cues from the wildly popular Mustang, it just wasn't enough. To many buyers, the Falcon still looked like yesterday's car in a world that was racing toward tomorrow. At the same time, a new wave of federal safety and emissions regulations was looming on the horizon. Standards the aging Falcon simply couldn't meet without major redesigns. Ford knew it was time for something new, and in the fall of 1969, that something arrived. The Ford Maverick. With its bold Coke bottle curves, long hood, short deck, and fastback styling, the Maverick was everything the Falcon wasn't: modern, sleek, and ready to meet the new decade head-on. It came in as a 2-door only, targeting young buyers who wanted Mustang looks without Mustang prices. And on paper, it made sense. The Maverick was positioned to take the Falcon's place and carry the compact car torch into the 1970s. But even as the Maverick hit showrooms, the story of the Falcon wasn't quite over. A gap Ford didn't see coming. The Maverick may have looked the part, but it didn't cover all the bases. At launch, it came only as a 2-door fastback. Stylish, yes, but limited. And that created a problem Ford didn't fully anticipate. For years, the Falcon had been a go-to choice for budget-conscious families who needed something simple and practical. A 4-door sedan for getting to work. A station wagon for hauling groceries and kids. But when the Falcon disappeared and the Maverick stepped in, those options were suddenly gone. If you wanted a basic 4-door or a low-cost wagon in 1970, you were out of luck. Ford's own lineup forced you to move up into a Fairlane or a Torino. Both were mid-size cars with higher price tags, more features, and more weight than many economy-minded buyers wanted or needed. For families on a tight budget, that wasn't just inconvenient, it was a deal-breaker. So while the Maverick filled one role well, capturing younger buyers craving style, it left a big hole elsewhere. A hole that dealerships and customers began to feel almost immediately. And with Falcon fans still out there looking for something familiar, Ford found itself in an awkward spot. They needed a fix, fast. And what came next was one of the oddest decisions in the company's history. The return. No one expected Falcon 1970.5. Just when it seemed the Falcon name had been laid to rest, Ford did something no one saw coming. In the middle of 1970, months after the Maverick had taken center stage and Falcon production had officially ended, they brought it back. Quietly, strangely, and completely out of sync with how car launches were usually done. Enter the Falcon 1970½. It wasn't an all-new car. In fact, it wasn't even really a Falcon, at least not in the way buyers had come to know it. This new version was essentially a stripped-down Fairlane or Torino, rebadged with the familiar Falcon name, and offered in the configurations people had been missing: four-door sedans and station wagons. Why? Because there was a hole in the lineup, and Ford knew it. But instead of retooling the Maverick or building something truly new, they went for a quick patch job. And the result left more questions than answers. To many observers, both inside and outside the industry, the move felt rushed, even desperate. Why bring back a name you just retired? Why do it mid-year, when every marketing instinct said not to? And why slap it on a mid-size car that shared almost nothing with the compact Falcon of the past? The Falcon 1970½ was a car out of time, out of place, and out of rhythm with Ford's own playbook. It didn't get a big rollout. It didn't get flashy ads. It just appeared, as if someone, somewhere inside, Ford panicked and reached for an old name to fix a new problem. And yet, this strange resurrection was only the beginning of what made the 1970½ Falcon so unusual. A car born from chaos. To truly understand why the Falcon 1970½ existed at all, you have to look past the sheet metal and straight into the boardroom. Because behind the scenes, Ford wasn't just juggling product lines, it was battling a full-blown leadership crisis. By 1970, the company was in a state of internal upheaval. Bunky Knudsen, the president who had helped steer Ford's post-war image, was out. Lee Iacocca, the man who would later become a household name, hadn't yet stepped into his role as the company's guiding force. That left a power vacuum, an absence of clear direction at the very top. And when no one's holding the wheel, strange things tend to happen. Decisions were being made, not as part of a long-term vision, but as short-term reactions. Mid-level managers and division heads were left to fill the void, each trying to make their mark, push through pet projects, or simply patch over cracks in the lineup. The Falcon 1970½ may very well have been one of those projects. A why not idea greenlit in the absence of someone strong enough to say, wait a minute. It wasn't a bold innovation. It wasn't part of a grand strategy. It was a stopgap, plain and simple. A quick fix wrapped in a familiar name. But that's what makes it fascinating. The Falcon 1970½ wasn't just a car. It was a snapshot of a company at a crossroads, lurching between past and future, unsure of which way to go. And in that moment of corporate confusion, someone hit the revive button on a nameplate that probably should have stayed retired. And somehow, against all odds, the result was something oddly compelling. Because while the Falcon 1970½ didn't make much sense on paper, what came next made it unforgettable. The sleeper, hiding in plain sight. Strange as it was, the Falcon 1970.5 didn't just fill a gap. It quietly offered more than anyone expected. On the surface, it looked like what it was, a bare-bones mid-size car. No flashy trim, no fancy badging, just a rebadged Fairlane or Torino with the Falcon name slapped on the fender. But dig a little deeper, and you'd find something oddly intriguing. Ford offered the Falcon 1970½, in 3 practical body styles: a 2-door sedan, a 4-door sedan, and a wagon. That alone made it useful for folks who needed an affordable family car, something the Maverick simply couldn't provide at the time. Most buyers opted for the tried-and-true inline 6-cylinder engine. It was reliable, efficient, and exactly what you'd expect from a Falcon. But for those paying attention, and those with a mischievous streak, there was another option hiding in the order sheets. You could, if you knew how to ask, get the big one, the 429 cubic inch Cobra Jet V8. The same fire-breathing monster that powered Ford's muscle machines was now available in this unassuming Falcon. That meant 370 horsepower lurking under a body that screamed, "Nothing to see here." No bold stripes, no hood scoops, just pure sleeper material, perfect for surprising the guy next to you at the stoplight. For 6 strange months, Ford accidentally built one of the most unlikely muscle cars of the era. It wasn't meant to be fast. It wasn't meant to be memorable. And yet, in its quiet, awkward way, it became both. But as quickly as it arrived, the Falcon 1970½, would disappear, leaving behind a legacy as brief as it was bizarre. Gone in a flash, remembered forever. By early 1971, the Falcon 1970½, was gone. Just like that. No fanfare, no farewell tour. Just a quiet removal from the lineup, as if it had never existed. Ford had finally patched the hole with a 4-door version of the Maverick, giving budget-minded families what they needed without having to borrow the Falcon name again. But there was still no wagon in the Maverick line, at least not in the US, which meant the old Falcon wagons became something of a last hurrah. And with that, the Falcon name was officially laid to rest. For collectors and enthusiasts, it raises a curious question. Could the Falcon 1970½, be the shortest-lived production model in Ford's history? 6 months. That's all it got. In an industry where most nameplates stretch over years, sometimes decades, that kind of lifespan is almost unheard of. Some folks scoff at cars like this, oddball models, patchwork solutions, the ones that only lasted a year or less. But maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what makes them special. They're the misfits, the mistakes, the last-minute ideas that somehow slipped through the cracks. And for that very reason, they're worth remembering. Because in the great big story of American automobiles, it's not always the biggest, boldest names that leave a mark. Sometimes, it's the briefest appearances, the weirdest chapters, that stay with us the longest. And the Falcon 1970½? Well, it may have come and gone in a blink, but its story is anything but forgettable. The Falcon 1970½, wasn't the most beautiful car. It wasn't the most successful either, but maybe that's exactly why it's so memorable. Its short life, its strange timing, and its unexpected return all make it stand out in a way that few cars ever do. Sometimes it's the missteps, the oddballs and near misses that tell the most interesting stories. What about you? Had you heard of the Falcon 1970½, before today? Or do you think another car deserves the title of the shortest-lived model in American automotive history? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because it's your stories that keep this car-loving community alive and kicking. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, and make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next journey, where forgotten cars come roaring back to life with all the passion, speed, and history they deserve. See you in the next video.